Welcome everyone, thank you for joining us on our SAM Best Practice in Action webinar today. My name's David Bloxham, the Marketing Manager at Software One. Joined today by Michael Paling, who's our SAM Consultant at Software One, and also with Emma Corder, who's our Education Specialist for Software Licensing. So I'll soon be handing over to Michael to take us through today's session. Just run through a few housekeeping rules. As you may have noticed, as you entered today's webinar, you've been set on mute. This just to ensure that the sound quality remains at an optimum, but we do encourage questions and we'll have time for Q&A at the end. So please feel free to use the chat box facility on your panel. Send us your questions through the session and we'll have time at the end for some Q&A. So I'll hand over to Mike.
Thanks very much, David. So hi guys, today we're going to run through SAM Best Practice in Action. It's going to look at the theory side of software asset management, but also hopefully with some working examples and trying to dig into the areas that we should be focusing on to try and drive that optimization and really the return on investment. So what we'll do is we'll run through a quick overview of what software asset management is to ensure that we're all thinking on the same page, some examples of process in there, and then we'll dig a bit deeper into the 4 tiers of SAM maturity and then how that fits in with the 4 Ps. And we're going to finish off with some questions, and then I'll briefly run through what will be happening in the next 3 webinars in the 3 following weeks. Just before we get started, I will say that this webinar is pitched at the level of people who have an interest in software asset management, but not necessarily a deep background in it. So do excuse me if you are a bit more experienced than the pitch level, and bear with me. Hopefully you will find something interesting and usable in the webinar. Okay, so what is software asset management? We'll start off with a quick definition. So it's saying all of the infrastructure and processes necessary for the effective management, control, and protection of the software assets throughout all stages of their life cycle. So what we're talking about here really is taking our software assets from the point of request from the user through to the point of deployment, procurement, but also then to the retirement and what we do with our assets after they've taken away and that user's left the business. Okay, so within this, we'll be looking at the ITIL framework with the 4 Ps that are people, product, process, and partners. Okay, so within that, the people, very simply, is the roles and responsibilities for software asset management throughout the business. That's from the likes of yourselves, who are likely hands-on in the software asset management world, through to the end users, who I think have a very strong role in software asset management within the business, and really how we educate to those people that the expectations we put upon them. The products, so the tools out there that help us do our job, from the freeware that we see through to the comprehensive tools that drive automation. Also including some of the tools that the vendors make available out there, such as Microsoft's MAP, IBM's ILMT, and a number of the other ones out on the market. Okay, the process side, this is an often overlooked area, but even with the best tools and people out there in the world, they won't be as effective unless we put the processes and policies in place to manage things ongoing. The real key in this area is making sure that the education of these processes is put out there, and that they are adopted by the people in the IT department, but also by the wider IT users. And the final area is the partners, and this includes from your vendors through to your subject matter experts and the consultants that you drag in for some support. The key here is to work out where partners can be utilized to drive extra efficiency, and where you can really pull in your subject matter experts from your partners to help you in areas that you don't necessarily have the strength on, or it would be inefficient to do so within your business. Okay, and we're going to drive through and just have a quick look at the diagram there that shows the software lifecycle, really showing the different areas, and software asset management to me should be touching every single one of these areas and really should be the controlling force in the IT department. for these areas, what we're looking at, for those who aren't fully aware, the frameworks in place is ISO's 19770-1, which is for software asset management, which has then been adapted and made into a slightly more practical framework in the ITIL, and we're currently on version 3 that we're focusing on, and that's where if you're aware of those, you'll see some of the diagrams in this presentation come from, and gives us a little bit of a structure for us to work to. Okay. The key around that is to understand where do these frameworks apply and where may they be slightly overkill or maybe slightly dream world rather than the real applicable and beneficial areas. Okay. So I've just thrown in here, if those are wondering, when I'm talking about processes, just a few examples that are out there in the ITIL world. In the process side of things, I'm sure a lot of your organizations will have a number of these in place. We see with the customers that we work with that some people have them and haven't written them down, don't have them on paper. And the key there is to make sure that they're actually checkable. Can we ensure that they're being taken up by people, but also that we can improve on them going forwards and monitor their efficiency. So just to dig out a couple of examples here, I often see companies that will have a new starter process. So how do we request new hardware and software for a starter? But on the flip side, they often forget about the retirement process. So what do we do when that person's leaving the business or moving to a different department? How do we make sure that, obviously on the hardware side, we'll normally have something in place to get it back. But what do we do with those software licenses? Do we make sure that they're actually out there and being made available for other users to take up where applicable? Also, the request process. So how do you manage it when an employee wants a piece of software? Is it from the really laissez-faire approach where you just allow people to go out and buy their own software? Or is it through to the hard extreme where you don't let anyone have anything and you just restrict and make them go through a number of approval processes? So it's finding that balance in between that allows us a bit of control, but also facilitates our end users to get the best out of their IT department. Another area that's not on here but is key is the fair use policy as well. So that's something that it helps to have in place to ensure that our end users are using our hardware and software in the ways that we meant them to, and also helping us reduce the risk from not only non-compliance, but also some of the bigger risks out there from your torrenting software that will often bring the likes of malware down and other security risks in the environment. Okay. So jumping on to the 4 tiers of SAM maturity. The first tier that we see and that we want to be getting to is trustworthy data. So really what this is about is understanding how do we get the data to know what have we deployed out on the estate and what's actually being used. So the key here is understanding, are we managing this via spreadsheets? Is this something that we are relying on people to update as they deploy? If so, how do we know that that's accurate? Are we relying on something that is open to human error? Or do we have tools out there that maybe can drag that back and really help us to understand? And really the next step from there is, are we using multiple tools to check for data accuracy? The key around this is really giving us visibility. And that's firstly on the software that we know we should be using, but one of the key areas, again, in the security side of things, is visibility of the unknown. So what are our users doing out there that we don't really have a view of? So this is a key when I see people using spreadsheets to monitor their software, especially if end users have some control over their own devices. You often see software on their machines that wasn't put there by any of the IT guys. They've just gone out and put it on themselves, often through ignorance more than malice. But it can be an area of risk and something that it's great to have control on and visibility for. The next step is practical management. So what we're really talking about there is control. And that's putting in place the steps to allow you to get a handle on your estate. And really here what we want to be doing is driving tangible return on investment for the business. So the ways we do that is reducing overspend on software licenses, reharvesting licenses back into the business, and also making sure that any software that we've deployed that we're not seeing usage on, we can monitor that and we can get that back. On the server side of things, this can be very large. We often see that a lot of people that think they've got a great handle on their estate, we can do a quick scan of and find a large number of, for example, SQL boxes out there that were for applications that have long since been retired, but the SQL backend has been left there just through accidental use, and obviously that can cause a rather large risk for us, especially in case of audit. Okay, the next step is operational integration. So really here is now driving ongoing efficiencies for the business. And the key is trying to automate a lot of the processes. So this is where we can leverage a lot of the tools, but also putting in the processes in place that take away the stress of being reactive and try and take a proactive approach to software asset management. The final step is the full ISO conformance. As it says here, this is your best-in-class strategic SAM plan. Really, what we see here is that it's unrealistic for most businesses, and certainly a lot of our higher education customers find that this is very much a kind of overkill approach. So what we always suggest here is trying to find the pick-a-mix approach that picks out the areas that really are relevant for the business and the way that it runs, and also focusing on what will bring return on investment. So which bits can we put in place really that make sense for us from a commercial standpoint? Okay, so what we're going to dive into now is how do those 4 Ps fix with the 4 tiers, and look at a lot of different 4s. Okay, so here you'll see the 4 Ps are Tonic Grid, and we're just going to dive through each piece one by one and how we can step up. So to start with, in the product piece, this is where we're looking for the inventory recognition and license management. This is quite a large area, so we look out there and there's a large number of tools out on the market. A lot of people gather inventory via SCCM or other tools like that. And what we're really talking about here is how do we drive something that gathers every single bit of data and gathers it in an accurate format. And what we want to look at here is probably a number of different tools for the different software vendors and the different platforms that we deploy on. But the key really is to make sure that it's gathering all of the data necessary for our license metrics. So a great example is from history is SCCM has consistently failed to recognize SQL and the addition out there, and that can cause a huge risk when it comes to SQL, because that can be anywhere from an Express edition, which is free to use, all the way through to the Enterprise edition, which I'm sure everyone's aware can cost us a large sum of money into the tens of thousands. So as you see, if you find 8 boxes of those, it could be £0 or £80,000 plus, which is quite a stark difference. The next bit of that is looking at the recognition. So what we mean here is when our tool finds a piece of software out there, does it know what that piece of software is? And this is really to save a lot of time for the person managing the data, because if you end up getting a lot of exe files back, how do you know which one's which? And really that takes a hell of a lot of time to go through and work out what software we're looking at. So what we like to see is tools out there that have those software recognition inbuilt to them, so they can do that job for you. And really the next step is when it's pulled back the thousands and thousands of executables that you've got out on your estate, which ones of those are licensable, and therefore what is relevant to look at. So really here is an area that tools can save the software asset management team a lot of time and a lot of effort in the boring data analysis piece. Then on the license management side is the next step. So that's really automating some of the license knowledge for you. So what can you upgrade and downgrade from? How how do you apply those rights? Which pieces of software fit into software suites? So a great example is Adobe software. If we have multiple pieces from one of the old creative suites, how do we apply that? Manually, that can take quite a large amount of time. Know that from experience. But if we've got a great tool in place that can do the license management side, those can be automatically applied by rules, and we can drive efficiency on cost without spending hours and hours pulling through Adobe suite matching. Okay, on the process side, as this is very much on the trustworthy data piece, we're looking at inventory and verification process. So how do we go about pulling in the inventory? How do we go about ensuring that's accurate? So there's multiple ways that we can look at it here. It's understanding whether we're going out and checking manually on some of the machines to ensure that the data pulled back is accurate, but also are we running multiple tools so that we can have a little more faith in what we're seeing? And then how are we checking those against each other, again, to make sure it's accurate. From the people side, I find this is a really key area, is starting with putting in a single point of responsibility. So as you guys have joined this call, there's a high likelihood that might be you in the organization. That's very key, because at that point then that single person can then start to delegate the responsibility and the work out to others, but you always know who is there and people know who to turn to. The key here as well is that single point of responsibility is very unlikely to be all-knowing in all vendors and all areas of software licensing. So it's key for them to understand where are their subject matter experts, who do we need to pull in, and are they on the infrastructure team? Are they on the software deployment team? And that's the kind of key. The Microsoft experts, Oracle experts, Adobe, all the different areas, we get those in place and document them. Okay, from the partner side, this is the area then where we're looking at the knowledgeable on the SAM tools. So obviously, a lot of people who are in an organization may have seen one, may have seen a couple of tools, but are unlikely have seen the breadth of different tools out there. And certainly, it is an area that is rapidly evolving. In the last 5 years, certainly it's changed completely. So really, this is an area you can lean on your partners to give you a bit of their experience in the market, which tools help you do which jobs. And then, as importantly, is the subject matter experts for the publishers. So again, here's areas where people such as Emma sitting next to me, experts in your Microsoft licensing can help you out with, but also then if you're looking at maybe some of your slightly more obscure areas, maybe your attachmates, your SAPs, if you're involved in any of those areas, you might not have that expertise in-house, but you can reach out to your partners or to the vendors themselves. Okay, now when we're trying to drive down to tier 2, okay, so this is our practical management area. What we're looking at here in the products and tools area is the reporting and controls. So how do the tools that we've put in place allow us to report and report easily? How can we automate those reports coming out as well? And what I mean here is anything from easily reporting on what software we have deployed, but also reporting on our compliance picture, all the way through to, can we report on here every machine that's got antivirus software on, and any machine that clearly hasn't, but also the likes of blacklisted software. So quite often we see in an estate a large number of uTorrent, or we see some games out on the estate, and if we're not happy with that, how do we report on that quickly so that we can remedy it and maybe put some education into the end user that maybe isn't the best use of the university hardware and software. Okay. It's also looking at the controls that we can put in place. So how do we lock down machines that maybe reduce the access to install people's software, but also do we want to look at reducing the use of externals like memory sticks that may bring malicious software into the environment? Lots of different areas that can help you keep control, but also keep that freedom for the end users where necessary. Okay. On the process side, the organizational management now. So what we're looking at here, as I said before, is looking at the fair use policy. So how do we start educating the people around the business that really what's allowed and not allowed, and the key to education is helping them understand the impact of their actions. So a lot of people don't want to put malicious software on their PCs, laptops, but might do so accidentally just through ignorance or trying to get through some shortcuts. Okay. Also in this area are our procurement processes. So how do we take the request from a person? Do we check that against our trustworthy data? Do we then make sure that if we do require a license, we know where to go and how to get it at the best price, but also ensuring that we do buy the correct piece of software? Okay, through to the people. Now what we want to be doing is rolling out roles and responsibilities. So this is really then you've gone from a single point of responsibility. Now we're starting to put in place defined roles for other people within the business so that they understand whether it's an IT manager, whether it's people in the infrastructure team, through to the procurement team and the HR. Trying to say to people that, yeah, you're all in different departments, but you all have a responsibility towards software asset management, and working together is how we drive the real efficiency. Okay. Into the partner side, this is really, again, where we can lean on people for the subject matters experts to help us interpret the reporting. This comes into play, especially in areas around Oracle. For sure, if we're relying on scripts, they can quite often pull back a lot of data that's quite hard to understand, but there's people out there that do sit down and day in, day out, look at that data and interpret into a usable format. So can we lean on those people? But also, how do we use our partners to leverage what we like to call best experience? So this is rather than best practice, looking at the theoretical side of things. We say best experience is really, we understand the theory, but when we actually get hands-on with our customers, what do we see in their organizations that allows us to get experience from there that we can pass on to other customers to really help shortcut the process? Okay. So tier 3, operational integration. In the product side, this is where we're looking for our tools to try and integrate into our help desk or our service desk. Also, it's great if we can get tools that integrate into our HR and our procurement side of things. And really what we're doing here is driving automation throughout the business. So when we've got this great trustworthy data, are we ensuring that everyone in the business that can benefit from it are really getting that usage from it? I often see companies put in SAM tools and they are used by maybe a procurement or a software asset manager in the business. But when the IT department actually get to see the amazing level of data in there, they're quite wowed by that and that the speed that they can get on with their projects. So it's always key to make sure that those guys are kept aware of what we have in place. And really that helps drive the return on investment area, but also any business cases for those pieces of software asset management technology. And the next thing is really your service desk people who are trying to provide the support to your end users. The SAM tools can provide an incredible level of data to those guys to know which users have been using which machines, what software have they been using on those machines that may have caused the issues that they've got to. Okay. On the process piece, we're looking at the operational management and integration. So really this is where we're looking at our deployment processes. So how are we controlling what people put out there? Is there a change management process put in place? Do we have teams for that? So maybe a new project that's putting out a new application with some back-end databases. Do we have a team set up to ensure that that's designed to not only a best practice standpoint for ensuring that it works, but also from a licensing viewpoint to make sure that it is as license and cost efficient as possible. Other area around this is the reharvesting piece. So are we making sure that we do get the most out of the software licenses that we buy? Within the people side of things, this is really where we're broadening our roles and responsibilities out to the wider IT and the non-IT end user environment. So what I mean here is just that education piece again, making sure that people understand the implications of their actions. But also what we want to be doing is to get into a mature point is putting in what we call RACI or RACI. And what we're talking about there is a responsible, accountable, consulted, or informed. So I'll dig into that slightly more when we go into the final step where that's formalized. Okay, so the partners. At this point, when we really understand our estate and we've made some more efficiencies, this is an area where we can consider some of the benefits of outsourcing some of these processes to our partners. Again, this is a key to understand the return on investment that you might get from this. Some areas it's very much beneficial to keep in-house. Some areas it's handy to be able to lean on the subject matter experts from that a partner may have, maybe a few days a week, a few days a month, rather than having them as full-time employees that really don't return that investment that you put into them. Okay, so our final level, as we said, the full ISO conformance. On the product side, we're talking end-to-end automation. Obviously, this is a nirvana state that may be impractical for many users. What we recommend here is understanding which areas can we automate that really cut down on the time and effort relied on by the software asset management team, but also the service desks, the HR and the procurement teams, and which areas, again, will drive that return on investment for us. There's a lot of funky tools out there that can deploy our software from a software shop and then can pull that software back when we're seeing it's not being used, can automate the entire process, can also have sign-off levels, and that's fantastic, but it may be overkill, and obviously there's cost attached to that. So it's ensuring that we do that cost-benefit analysis before we dive into anything like that. Okay. The process very clearly is just ensuring now that we have that full process maturity. First of all, are all of the processes in the ITIL area put in place where necessary? But I think the key here is to ensure that we have an improvement plan. So again, this comes back to, as I said, documenting those processes and revisiting them on a regular basis. Have we created those processes to fit in the culture of the business? If so, hopefully they'll be adopted by everyone. And that's normally the area that we see pushback from people, is when we just try to put a best practice process in place without tweaking it to the requirements of the business. If the process that we see is not working, are we doing something to improve it? Are there areas that we can alter it, get the buy-in of all of our stakeholders, and really get that process to drive the efficiency that we wanted out of it? Okay, the people side. This comes back to roles and responsibilities and ensuring from the top down that we have a formal RACI Matrix. So what we want to see here is who's responsible for that step. And really the key is who's going to be doing those tasks, who's assigned to work on those tasks as well. So as we said, from the start, that quite often can be one person in a single point. But for delegated tasks, that may be certain subject matter experts. Who's accountable? And that's ultimately who's got the authority to make the decisions, but also if something goes wrong, who are we going to look to say we need to improve what we're doing? Who's going to be consulted? So this is your stakeholders out there who can provide information to help you on those tasks. So if it's understanding your environment, you might want to look at your infrastructure guys, maybe some database admins, that kind of area, but also your project and product subject matter experts. And then finally, who do you want to inform? And that's really the task that we're carrying out, who's it going to impact and who would like to know about it, really. And once we formalize that for the relevant steps, it means that a new person can come into the role, pick that up and see straight away, okay, I know who to involve in this project and can get on with it a lot quicker than what we often see is that project takes a few weeks to get off the ground as people are running around asking who's responsible, who do I need to talk to. On the partner side, this is where we see the benefit of going out to an independent to come in and verify that everything that we've put into place, is it working? Is it best of practice? Are there gaps in there for us to improve on? Okay, that pretty much wraps up the bulk of the presentation for now. So I'd like to take any questions that we have out there.
Thank you, Mike. So I will just have a look through now, see if we do have any questions on the panel. As mentioned, please feel free to use the chat box facility. So I will just have a look. Okay, so we currently don't have any questions, Mike, so which must be a validation of your excellent educational skills. So probably the best thing to do if we just move on and just remind people of the upcoming webinars that are coming for the rest of the series.
Okay, yeah, so thank you very much everyone for jumping on for this. The next webinar next week and the one following that are going to dive more away from the software asset management side and into the licensing piece. So what we're going to be doing is jumping first of all onto SQL, and that's where we're going to be having our Microsoft license experts come in and run the webinar. They're going to dive into the overview of SQL licensing. How's it changed? Obviously, many of you will have seen that from the 2008 R2 through to now the 2016 we're expecting to see quite a lot of changes in the way it's licensed, and there's a lot of pitfalls and risks out there for the business, and that's what we're going to run through. The next step is looking at the future of the modern desktop. So really we're going to look into the operating system for the end user, looking at Windows 10, what does it mean for the organization? Is it really free, as Microsoft like to tell us? But then also looking into the Office 365, some of the applications and the impact of moving to a cloud-based environment, and also the different ways of delivering that to your end user and the license implications. We're going to finish off in a few weeks with a colleague of mine, Greg, who's going to talk to you about kickstarting your SAM improvement plan. Really, the key on that is to look at the theory and the different areas that we've looked over the first three webinars and look at practical examples of how do we drive cost reduction and risk reduction across the Microsoft estate. Obviously, we know at the moment Microsoft are getting keener and keener on their audit behavior, and what we really want to make sure is that we're in the best place possible in case that dark day does happen. Okay, so thank you very much once again for your time on the webinar. If you do have any questions, please feel free to contact me or Emma. I believe David will be sending out a follow-up email to everyone after this webinar with all of those details. Yeah, feel free to get in touch.
That's great. Thank you, Mike. Yes, so just to confirm, you'll receive a follow-up email with details of the upcoming webinars and indeed details of Mike and Emma, how to get in touch with them. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Mike, for taking us through the session. Hope that's been informative and valuable use of your time. We look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thank you very much.